Once upon a time, there was a fine new housing project for rats. Big Rat could have his own snug burrow, stroll on its big flat roof, duck in to see his wives and children, and come out again to start his day's work. Food and water are furnished, but a good father makes sure. He runs down the steps, supplies are in order, and a look around shows all is well. His family is safe. Big Rat can rest beside the steps. But in a very short time, it seemed, the project became crowded. There was no longer room for every male rat to have a burrow for his family. Homeless males roamed the area, attacking females, marauding. Big Rat has to fight to protect his privileged status. Two marauders steal up to the very entrance of his burrow, half fearfully, taunting. Big Rat charges after them. It's a chase. Around the steps, through the buildings, and over the feeding trough. The marauders turn and fight. Others join them. Big Rat wins this time. But even now, more marauders are stalking his burrow. You see, Big Rat's fine housing project is part of an experiment to test the stress of overcrowding. And there's no place else for him to go.
Stress. It's part of life for humans and animals. We experience stress every day. Modern life can be very busy and hurried. We're under stress in ordinary situations and in extraordinary situations. City life can be a hassle.
I don't have time.
Just get it there. I don't.
But even in the country, there is the pressure of time. There's always work to do. And would we get the job done if we didn't experience some stress? Work involves stress. And so does sport. The mind and body work together to prepare us for any trial, for any test, so we can rise to the occasion. When did you last experience stress? Probably today. Students certainly experience it. Children experience it too. A stressful situation can be ordinary or extraordinary. It can be exhilarating or exasperating if we lose a parking space. This has happened to a lot of us. And it really makes our blood boil. But stress is a fact of life. We all spend a lot of time experiencing stress. and dealing with it. If all of these experiences are stressful, what do they have in common? Is stress all in our minds? Is it just nervous tension? Or is it all physical? At its simplest, stress results when we call upon our minds or bodies to do something they don't ordinarily do. The key to understanding the stress reaction is in our bodies. Stress is the same for people and animals. All animals depend upon the nervous system for survival. When danger strikes, the nervous system makes the body react quickly, automatically. Heart rate and blood pressure go up. Digestion stops. Breathing quickens. These automatic internal reactions to danger are called the fight or flight response, and the autonomic branch of the nervous system controls them. In contrast, the skeletal muscles are voluntary. They're controlled by a different branch of our nervous system. But certain muscles and organs in the body are mainly controlled by the autonomic nervous system. The stomach, the heart, blood vessels, and glands work automatically because of the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system has two parts. One part, the sympathetic system, stimulates organs so the body can meet an emergency. The other part, the parasympathetic nervous system, helps the body recover, preparing it for the next emergency. Adrenal glands above the kidneys are an important part of the autonomic nervous system. The adrenal glands release hormones into the bloodstream, adrenaline and other hormones called corticoids. The secretion of adrenaline makes the heart beat more strongly and quickly. The pupils of the eyes open wide. Bladder and stomach stop working. Blood vessels constrict in the skin, making the skin pale. So blood is shunted to the muscles, to the lungs, and to the brain, where it's really needed. The liver makes more blood sugar available. Everything is prepared for action. Adrenaline is called the fight or flight hormone. Fight or flight is one way to describe the body's first response to stress. We also call it the alarm reaction. But what if the race isn't a sprint? What if it's a marathon? In other words, what if the stress is continuing? What happens to the body? Well, it enters another stage in the response to stress, the resistance stage. During this stage, the body adapts to the stress, but only for a while. If the stress still continues, the body can no longer adapt and enters a third phase, the stage of exhaustion. The body just gives in. Vital functions slow down almost to a stop. So increasing or continuing physical stress causes predictable, almost automatic changes in the body. Now, what about emotional stress? Does the human autonomic nervous system have the same response to different emotions? Like, for instance, fear, joy, and anger? The joy of receiving a gift, for example, may make the heart beat a little faster. More blood may flow to the face, something better known as blushing. But what would happen if this little girl saw a stuffed rattlesnake inside? She'd be startled, then fearful. Sweat glands would start working, and the heart rate speed up in preparation for retreat. But when her mind realized that the whole thing was just a practical joke, she'd probably get angry. Her mind might think, "I am burned up," while her body would sweat to cool that burning body. Practical jokes really make some people angry. How would you react? Would you get angry? Or freeze in panic? Or just burst out laughing? Laughter, you know, is a great way to relieve stress. But the point is, anger and joy, emotions, cause basically the same physical response in the body as stress does. Does that surprise you? Did you know that you may feel as much stress just watching your favorite team score a touchdown as those players on the field experience? Now, you may be thinking, hey, wait a minute. I like watching my team win. That's not stress. Well, it is stress, good stress. The experience of stress can be good as well as bad. The distinguished scientist Hans Selye talks about bad stress and good stress, which he calls eustress in vivid terms.
I would say that stress can be good or bad for you. A very typical example is one which has made a great impression because it sounds almost impossible. The lash of a whip and a passionate kiss can, in medical terms, be equally stressful, equally conducive to the production of stress hormones such as adrenaline and corticoids and so on. And the World Health Organization used in its cover story, in its cover picture on a special number on stress, which I was asked to introduce, a young pair kissing each other passionately to show that there is eustress. It's obvious that they were under stress. They secreted adrenaline, they secreted corticoids, they showed all the many manifestations of stress, but they didn't, at least assuming that they were both adults and consenting, did not suffer distress.
Kissing. Studying. All motivation is probably based on stress of some kind. In fact, these young people might be too relaxed to study well. Would they study better with a little more stress? In the form, say, of a hard seat? Or maybe a chair with a straight back? This kind of stress can be called good stress or eustress. Physical strain is certainly a form of stress. But it can also be a source of exhilaration and great joy. Physical exercise can relieve stress too. But for some people, the competition of sport can create stress. So, good stress or bad stress? It depends on who you are and what you are like. For a lot of people, cities are a hassle. Crowds, noise, pollution. But other people see cities as places of bustle and vitality. They enjoy crowds and would not thrive in wide open spaces. But these rats had no choice. Their burrows were in an enclosed area, part of an experiment to study the effects of overcrowding. In these films of the actual study, we've seen violence flare. Rats fight, or flee to corners, puzzled, confused. This rat only backs off from his pursuers. Why? And why do they pursue him? In this study, conducted a number of years ago, a rat population was kept at twice the size that could live normally in the experimental enclosure. Normal behavior patterns disintegrated. Mothers neglected babies. Fathers could not defend family burrows. Marauders moved in. Homeless rats roamed the area, pursuing the weak. And the weak retreated. They couldn't cope. And they couldn't get out. And they gave up. Results of the study highlighted effects of one type of stress and various ways of coping. Humans, too, can learn to cope in various ways. Stress is not continuous, but there is always activity in the autonomic nervous system. Either we're under stress or we're recovering, maybe relaxing. Some of us, because of our personalities or occupations, find our sympathetic systems in action much of the time. We all need some stress in our lives to be active and productive. But some of us really seem to have more stress in our lives than others. And stress can seriously affect your health.
United 52, turn right, heading 060.
Many jobs cause stress. But air traffic controllers suffer a far greater incidence of ulcers and other stress-related ailments than most people. This could be because air traffic controllers bear enormous responsibility for events beyond their direct control. Responsibility without control is a source of stress in many jobs. And responsibility with control, control of life or death, is a tremendous source of stress, too. Surgeons and other physicians suffer more heart attacks than the general population. Heart attacks and ulcers are results of stress which we can observe and measure objectively.
I don't want to go into real estate area. I don't want to go into lumber. I don't want to do any of those things. I get fed up with, okay, I get fed up like today,
But it's hard to measure feelings and emotions.
I wouldn't be happy doing anything else. It gets in your blood. It's just part of me. I'm trained to be a cop. I've fought like a cop for years.
You know, I'm telling you something. Maybe you can't get out of it. Oh, my gosh, I can get out of it.
Honey, come on. You get him. Honey, just because you're pregnant. Now, come on. Please. Look, I don't want to get into this again. It seems like it's all we fight over.
Individual feelings and personalities have a great deal to do with how each of us lives and reacts to stress. Personality is the focus of a well-known study on heart disease. This study describes two hypothetical types of people, A and B, who might react very differently to identical situations. Type B is relaxed, unhurried, uncompetitive. He or she is not likely to push self or others, takes the time to ponder problems, and often finds imaginative solutions. The type A personality is just the opposite. He or she eagerly accepts responsibilities, is always in a hurry, and is very competitive, aggressive, and even hostile. Type A feels compelled to do more and more work. Although most personalities fall somewhere between these two extremes, we can say that people with type A characteristics are more likely to suffer from stress and stress-related illnesses like heart disease. One type A personality is John Murphy, executive.
I've been through enough psychological testing to have gotten the feedback that I have a tendency toward anxiety, a fairly low level of tolerance for stress. And that was an important discovery because I think that before you can really do anything about that, you really have to buy off on the idea that a lot of what you feel is stress, you're doing to yourself. That events and reality in themselves are not either inherently stressful or unstressful. They're facts that exist, and whether they're stressful depends an awful lot on your interpretation of them and how you react to them and whether you let them bother you or not.
When do we learn about stress? Many of our adult reactions to stress are learned in childhood. When we first find ourselves at odds with our parents, we're faced with stress. A little boy and dinner time. Mom says, "Stop playing and wash your hands before Daddy comes home." The boy says, "No." Mom says, "Oh, yes." And the little boy's sympathetic nervous system goes into action. Now, he either argues or runs away. But he learns that what he does may change a stressful situation. Meeting stress helps him learn to feel responsible for his actions. But he may find that neither fighting nor fleeing works, especially after Dad comes home. Then he has no outlet for his stress. If Dad says, "You do what I say right now or else," the boy can't fight or flee. He may learn just to prevent the stress or block it out by becoming depressed. Or as an adult, he might use what psychologists call defense mechanisms to cope with stress. Take, for example, regression. Behaving like a child in a stressful situation, like an argument.
These are real dishes that I have to wash day in and day out, and Garth, this is the very last one.
Two can play at that game.
Don't you dare throw that dish! Don't you tell me what to do!
At parties, a lot of us use defense mechanisms to cope with stress. One person might pretend to be having fun when he's not. Someone else might say that others feel the way she really does.
This party is so incredibly dull. Look at these people. They're bored stiff.
Stress. It can be bad or good. And we all have to deal with it, to cope, whatever our personality type. Even though modern life and our individual personalities and occupations may create stress for us, we can cope. We can deal with stress effectively. There are many healthy ways to cope with stress. Some, like jogging, improve our physical and mental health, which makes us better able to deal with stress. For some individuals, physical exercise alone is enough to relieve the effects of stress. But many people need complete rest, and there are techniques for them. Some have been around for centuries. Yogis, Zen monks, and others have long practiced meditation and describe it as totally relaxing. On the simplest level, meditation is a way to achieve a peaceful state of body and mind. Body and mind can work together to control reactions to stress in a new technique called biofeedback. This man is about to undergo biofeedback training. He's going to learn how to reduce the amount of muscle tension as measured by the electrical activity emanating from muscles on his forehead. What it means is he's learning how to regulate his own system internally, the internal physiological processes. When it's important to relieve or reduce the stress in your life, how you do it doesn't really matter, so long as it suits your personality.
Get it there. I don't care how.
Some people suffer too much stress, but when there's too little, people become bored and unproductive. Finding the right amount of stress is never easy. If the strings of a violin are too loose, they moan and groan. If they're too tight, the result is a screech. But when the instrument is properly tuned, we get music. Many people think stress is destructive, but that's not always true. There is good stress and bad stress. Stress is a necessary part of life, but we need to balance stress and relaxation. Without any stress, there are no challenges and no growth. Just as a marathon runner needs stress to train, each of us needs stress to develop any capacity, mental or physical. By being in touch with ourselves, we can help mind and body achieve an optimum level of stress. Too much or too little is a problem, but it's the kind of problem that can be solved.